not so lucky pioneering jockey Rachel Blackmore retires. Telegraph front page of the Sports Supplement: Van Dijk, Trent must deal with fans' fury, and Coco pops Emma Bubble. That's Raducanu out of the Italian Open. Up in smoke, United plan barbecue, not bus parade, if they win Europa. And the Mirror, red man walking, boss Amorim to face Sir Jim firing squad in summer, even if he wins Europa League. OK, well, let's start with the front page of the Telegraph Sports Supplement. Virgil van Dijk then speaking on the Trent Alexander-Arnold situation. Chris Bascom with the story for the Telegraph. Liverpool captain refuses to condemn jeers from the cop. Players, quote, gutted by England defenders' decision to leave. How delicate, David, is it for the current players who are staying to ride the balance between supportive teammate but not condemning the supporters?
It's not easy at all, but they're doing a pretty good job of it so far, judging by their public comments. This story really has taken on a life of its own. It's got a bit out of control, if you ask me. I understand all of the emotions involved on every side of the argument and do respect the various views. But the one thing I would say is that Trent Alexander-Arnold carried himself in a pretty dignified way, in the fact that he was available for selection, which not many players would be if they were heading for a free transfer exit and their future had already been announced. And he played pretty well. He also applauded the fans in front of the Kop and around Anfield at the end. You heard Andy Robertson talking very eloquently about it afterwards. I'm sure Trent Alexander-Arnold is big and strong enough to have expected an element of what was coming and then to take what has come, because he's made this decision for his own future, and he's given his reasons in part for that. And Virgil van Dijk as well, and I'm sure we'll hear more from other players. We saw Dominic Szoboszlai sort of gesticulating towards the Kop, his frustration at the reaction of sections of the fan base, but there were a lot of cheers for him as well. And I think, you know, as everybody said, it's not really our job to tell people how to feel on all of this. They can feel how they want, and perfectly entitled to do so. In my opinion, you know, the Liverpool fans are above the booing. I do get the reasons that they're doing it for, but personally, I think it's worth sort of trying to find a bit of perspective in this, so that it doesn't overshadow their title celebrations, their Premier League trophy lift, and the parade that will follow the day after.
Indeed, record equalling 20th title as well, Miguel. Let's go to the back page of the Star. John Cross with the story there. Bring your own booze. Van Dijk fans react how they like, but we will party with Trent. It is an important message from David there, isn't it, Miguel, about the significance of the title win, but also the end of an era, perhaps, with this group of players and what Trent represented to them?
Well, it's interesting, I suppose, because elsewhere, some of the headlines have focused on, rather than Van Dijk on Trent, but on Van Dijk's calls for a big summer. And I think we expect that anyway from Liverpool, which will kind of, I suppose, foster the sense, especially with Trent Alexander-Arnold leaving, of a new cycle for the team. Now, obviously, Slot replacing Klopp was the biggest change, but there has been that sense that it's still kind of Klopp's team. That I know Klopp himself did usher changes in his last few years, but it was maybe kind of a steadier progress or a steadier kind of evolution of the team rather than an outright overhaul. Whereas this summer, it does feel like there's going to be much more of that. And with kind of a homegrown player like Trent Alexander-Arnold going, it just kind of deepens the idea that it's going to be a much bigger change, and maybe the true beginning of the Slot era, which is remarkable when he's won a title in his very first season. But we'll probably get a much more Slot team next year. And of course, I mean, this is the other side of Trent Alexander-Arnold going. I mean, we've obviously focused so much on the response and off the pitch, but he's so distinctive a right back and arguably unique as a player in that sense that the very idea of replacing him changes the complete gravity of the team. Conor Bradley's a totally different style of player. I know they've been looking at Frimpong as well, if they do decide to kind of bring in another right back as an option. Again, he's a totally different style of player to Trent Alexander-Arnold. And yeah, it is going to... I suppose that's part of the response as well, how jarring this feels.
Interesting point, Miguel, and picking up on that, as you say, the transfer call maybe from Virgil van Dijk for an overhaul at Liverpool. The Express has Virgil turns up the heat. Van Dijk urges Reds to spend big this summer to bolster title defence. How big the changes could be then, David? What do you think? Because as Miguel says there, personnel, but also potentially for Arne Slot, without that creativity that Trent brought, you may have to rejig the rest of the team as well.
Yeah, firstly, they've transitioned into the Slot era very well, despite not getting Zubimendi, who was their main target last summer. They kept their powder dry and had the courage of their convictions to go with pretty much what they had. And it's been vindicated. It was only Chiesa who came in. He's not played a role. And now that helps them from a financial perspective. It means they've got resources to work with. And I do expect it to be a busy summer at Anfield. I think the priority is probably a striker when Darwin Núñez leaves, which is expected, a left back, but it would probably require either Robertson or maybe more likely Tsimikas to leave. And the top of the list is Milos Kerkez of Brighton. They will have other options too. What they do there may affect what type of right back they bring in, if they bring one in, because don't forget they've got Conor Bradley and Joe Gomez as options. I would expect Jarrell Quansah to leave. Frimpong, as Miguel mentions there, is very highly thought of. It's a pretty easy deal to do. It's a release clause around 35 million euros. He wants to come. Don't think his salary is particularly high, and that clause makes it quite clean as well. I don't know of other clubs really being in for him as to the extent that Liverpool are. And by the way, on Trent, you know, there's been so much conjecture around this potential move, but not all of us know exactly what's gone on behind the scenes in his situation. And with that in mind, I think a bit of respect is needed to actually the way he's being treated, because we've not been privy to anything unless we've been in those conversations. And a lot of the information that's been out there about what's been happening over the last couple of years, to my understanding, is not correct. Anyway, then into midfield, they may look to do something if Endo leaves, I don't know, but they had the emergence of Gravenberch, which has served them so well. And then they'll have to see what they do. Central defence, they like Dean Huijsen from Bournemouth, but they're not the only club in for him. They've got a new goalkeeper, presumably coming in Mamardashvili from Valencia. What's going to happen with the likes of Harvey Elliott? Luis Diaz has only got a couple of years left on his contract. Ibrahima Konate, no news on a new deal. He's approaching his final 12 months. So there's loads to do there. And that will really start to shape and define what the Slot era looks like going forward as they try and defend their Premier League title and make inroads in the other competitions.
Incredible listening to David there, Miguel. Think how much flux there could be at a team that's just absolutely strolled to the league, currently sitting 15 points clear. When you look at the rest of the contenders and some of the big boys who've performed so poorly this season, just wonder what kind of summer are you expecting in terms of movement?
I think it's going to be hectic. I mean, to be fair, actually, I do remember thinking as at the League Cup final when Liverpool lost to Newcastle, during that game, when they did look a bit fatigued, and there was almost this sense at the time, I wrote at the time basically, it's amazing we've gone from a team that a month ago seemed in such good shape and we're pretty much strolling to the title. And that is simultaneously true at the same time, simultaneously, you could see how this team actually still needs 5 players. And like sometimes that's just the way it falls or the way a team evolves in that way. But equally, yeah, I think we've spoken before about Arsenal. And I think they want to do at least 3 major signings, one of them being Zubimendi. And obviously, there's so much been made of a forward. City, we expect to be active again. And that, on top of that, of course, given PSR and kind of clubs' concerns about that and kind of and meeting obligations. I mean, a lot of executives talk about PSR churn, but you have to keep players moving just to always kind of stay within the rules. And it means we could be back to a window that is breaking records in terms of number of signings completed.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating, David. What's your general read on what to expect in the summer? And we've talked about the dearth of world-class strikers. Presumably they're going to be able to name their price to a whole host of suitors, aren't they? Because you just mentioned Darwin Núñez and perhaps that central position at Liverpool, let alone Arsenal, as Miguel says there.
Yeah, there's an imbalance in the supply of those number 9s and the demand. The demand far outweighs the supply. And so you're really just looking at a very small pool. So Alexander Isak is a player that Mikel Arteta and Arsenal really like. So do Liverpool, and I'm sure many other clubs. But it's not realistic that they're going to get him by the looks of it, because Newcastle have no intention to sell him. They don't have a financial need to do so. It looks like they'll qualify for the Champions League, so they'll be able to offer that to him. And also, he's under contract until 2028. He's already on a very good salary. They'll probably look to renew that deal. So that potentially takes him out of any kind of market. And then you're looking at maybe a Benjamin Sesko from RB Leipzig. It's an expensive deal to do, very talented young player. But in the case of Arsenal, who have him on their radar and they've done a huge amount of work on him, there may be some reservations around the price point and the player. There's Victor Gyökeres, who is going to be the target for many clubs. Arsenal are taking serious look at him with their new sporting director, Andrea Berta, a big fan. And so Arsenal, Manchester United with Ruben Amorim, who knows and loves him so much from their time together at Sporting Lisbon. Chelsea are in the market for a new number 9. And we're talking about the likes of Liam Delap. So he is wanted by Manchester United, by Chelsea and various others. Hugo Ekitike, that will be a really expensive deal, of course, from Frankfurt and a young player with such talent. And beyond that is pretty slim pickings. So I'm not sure that the clubs that need that position are necessarily going to fill it with the players that they want. And therefore, they might have to start to look towards maybe a winger or 9.5, as they're starting to call it, players who can sort of operate up front in the 10 wide. It's going to be a fascinating summer.
I think I was probably half a 9, to be fair, thinking about my football time. Let's reflect on one of those clubs in particular, I suppose, whose attractiveness is going to depend a lot on whether they're in the Champions League. Manchester United, Miguel. The stakes are high, stakes spelt like meat steaks. Up in smoke, United plan barbecue, not bus parade, if they win Europa, this in the sun. Have they read the room here? Do you think it's a smart call?
I think so. I mean, like when you consider the sort of feats that United have had bus tours for in the past, sometimes not even league titles, it does feel kind of maybe appropriate that a Europa League is a little bit more subdued, especially given the context of the season. I mean, obviously they should celebrate it, but it comes at a point where it's not quite a consolation prize. They need to essentially save the season. There's an element of that kind of glory being compromised slightly by what's gone on. So yeah, it does feel like kind of a quieter celebration among the players feels right, especially given the fans who travel, and those in Manchester will celebrate if they win it. But it's a big if right now, and what feels a very 50-50 game. And touching on transfers there as well, I mean, United are a club in a situation, I suppose, touching on what we're talking about, where they basically have to have 2 parallel transfer plans. One if they win the Europa League and get into the Champions League, and one if they don't. And it could really change the outlook of there somewhere beyond the choice of an open-top bus parade or a barbecue.
And this is an interesting line regarding Manchester United, David. Back page of the Mirror, David McDonnell reporting, red man walking. Boss Amorim to face Sir Jim firing squad in summer, even if he wins Europa League, saying that Manchester United will have a review of Amorim's position regardless. What's your take on this, David? Because recently there were positive comments from Ratcliffe. Do you think it's just been so bad they will have to reconsider?
Well, the way United's domestic season has gone and the position they're in the Premier League and their level of expectations, it would be bizarre if a club didn't review everything, and that will include the manager. But I don't think United would like to make another managerial change. It would be one of the last things on their agenda, and they'll probably do whatever they can to avoid it. They seem to really like Amorim, and so do the vast majority of the Manchester United fans. They like what they hear from him. They don't like what they've seen so much so far. And I think on this one, it will be more what Amorim wants to do. The soundings coming from him is that maybe he's not the right person to take them on if this is replicated next season. But, there's so much for Manchester United to do on and off the pitch, primarily in the transfer market in the immediate term, that I don't think they'll want to think about a managerial change. I think their priority will be trying to provide some players that allow Ruben Amorim to play the style of football he wants to implement to get Manchester United moving in the right direction. We have seen flashes of that in Europe. I thought the win at Bilbao was exceptional, and they've now got a chance to reach win the trophy, reach the Champions League. Although he's casting doubt on whether that would be great for them at this moment in time, given where they are. Certainly, the people who hold the purse strings will welcome Champions League qualification. And I do think they will stick with Amorim, but they cannot have another repeat of this season domestically. That's unthinkable.
Certainly has been very, very dreary stuff, hasn't it? The Express and Star cover Ruben Amorim's potential situation this summer as well. Ruben's still in danger if he wins final at the Express. Star says under review Amorim. Miguel, what's your take on it? Will it hinge on recruitment from Amorim's perspective that he can get some athletic wing-backs, some athletic midfielders? What's the key to maybe convincing him to stay, that his formation can work?
Well, I suppose this touches on one of the reasons actually why Liverpool ultimately went for Slot rather than Amorim over a year ago. I mean, it did not that it quite came down to a choice between the two, but certainly they strongly considered Amorim. And one of the factors there was they felt that because Amorim is so wedded to a certain system, it was better to go with Slot, who could fit in what they wanted. And as we've seen and as we discussed today, they wouldn't need to make the signings that were required for Amorim. Whereas with Amorim, he's so wedded to this system, almost kind of an ideologue about it, and something that's becoming, again, a little bit distinctive in the game, that it does require a very specific type of players to play in that. So how United go into next season maybe may depend on the level of the activity they can do in the summer, which of course depends on this game. So it's almost kind of not quite a house of cards, but all of these interlinked issues that go into the next campaign, not least about maybe Amorim's own comfort in the job himself. All that said, I agree with David. I'd be stunned if there was any sort of change in the summer, unless Amorim got so sick of things that he wanted to move on. But even in the context of, I know there's been so much focus on the domestic league campaign. It's a bit similar with Spurs now. I think we're at the point where both of these clubs, they're so focused on Europe that even if it's subconscious, it's kind of natural the players drop off. Yes, it's gone to kind of almost absurd and farcical levels, but I think when seasons become kind of almost, it's two parallel seasons running at once, it's sort of natural in some ways.
Well, hold that thought, Miguel. We'll talk Tottenham in just a second. What a huge Europa League final it will be. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, more of the sports stories in the morning's papers, including this in the Independent. Europa glory would transform club, but may not save me, claims Postecoglou.